The Washington spin machine, surprise, surprise, hard at work today. Republicans licking their chops to take down the current health care bill and pick off more Democratic incumbents come November. But is Scott Brown's victory truly a rejection of health care, the Obama administration, and Democrats? Or is it even bigger than that? A rejection of the status quo caucus in this country, represented by both incumbent Republicans and Democrats, who have run riot over the last decade accommodating special interests. President Obama guilty of perpetuating and expanding some of those abuses, perhaps. Remember, not once in Scott Brown's victory speech last night did the senator-elect say the word Republican.
Tonight, the independent voice of Massachusetts has spoken. Tonight, the independent majority has delivered a great victory.
Well, joining us now, Indiana Republican Congressman Mike Pence, chairman of the House Republican Conference. And Congressman Pence, welcome back. It's nice to see you. How do you look at this in the context of the status quo?
Well, I actually think, Dylan, you're pretty close to the mark. I don't see what happened in Massachusetts or Virginia or New Jersey so much as a victory for the Republican Party. I think it was, in each case, it was a victory for the American people. Look, the American people are tired of the borrowing, the spending, the bailouts, the takeovers that have been accelerated under now Democrat and previously under Republican administrations, and they're tired of it. They want us to put our fiscal house in order here in Washington, D.C., and they want us to set aside all these big government schemes and focus on the kind of measures that are going to get this economy moving again. I think they sent a deafening message to the political class in Washington, D.C., and I'm telling you what, Republicans are on the side of the American people in this fight.
So how do you make that clear? In other words, I think that everybody is skeptical of the words that come out of the mouths of politicians, and for that matter, the media in this country. At this point, without action, no one's going to believe anybody when it comes to going to the voting booths. What can Republicans lead, ask for, create in the agenda in the form of action, not rhetoric, that will validate some of what you just said?
Well, I hope, Dylan, in my case, as you know, I fought against runaway federal spending back when Republicans were in charge. Yeah. I battled against an expansion of the Medicare prescription, with the Medicare prescription drug entitlement, even though it was my party in power in Congress and in the White House. And I think what you've got is a new generation of Republican leadership that in the last year demonstrated our willingness not only to stand against more borrowing and spending and bailouts and these government takeovers, but Republicans, I know it didn't get reported a lot, but Republicans had substantive alternatives on the economy, on the budget, on energy, on health care. And as we meet with the President next week, our hope is that now, having heard all of us from the American people, that we're going to be able to get a willing ear at the White House and among Democrats on Capitol Hill about some of our proposals to get the economy moving again and get spending under control.
But just for the fun of it, let's just talk about a couple of pieces of low-hanging fruit. First with health care, then I'll ask you one on the banks. There's a legalized monopoly in health insurance with limited choice for individuals, limited portability for individuals, and yet they came in with a mandate that forced everybody to buy health insurance into an unreformed monopoly that simply caused those stocks to explode higher without liberating the real market forces in this country. How would you deal with something like those insurance monopolies in the employer-based system? Would you be willing to get into that hornet's nest? Don't you think you have to?
Well, I think you absolutely have to, and I think the American people know the way you can lower the cost of health insurance without growing the size of government is just let the American people purchase health insurance across state lines, the same way we buy auto insurance. I remember after I was on your show the last time, I think it was Senator Wyden who stopped me over in a hallway in the Senate and said, hey, saw you on television, and I'd love to get together and talk to you about my idea about allowing Americans to purchase around the country. You know, there are ideas here, medical malpractice reform, some reasonable national limits on punitive damages that would really focus on lowering the cost of health insurance and lowering the cost of health care. I don't think, and of course I'm not from Massachusetts and I don't vote there, but I don't think health care was the entire story in that race or in Virginia, but from the people I talked to on the ground, it was a major factor.
Sure.
You heard Scott Brown talking about it last night. The American people want health care reform, but I think whether it was Virginia, to some extent New Jersey, or Massachusetts, they said not the big government takeover that's been moving through the Congress so far.
And you and I both know you don't have to be Teddy Roosevelt to recognize that monopolies are bad for the future of America. Whether it's an insurance monopoly, a banking monopoly, and I don't care what it is, a monopoly that controls the government is good for the monopoly and may have influence in the government, but it's not good for the people.
That's right.
Thank you, Congressman. We really appreciate your time. Republicans, of course, calling Scott Brown's stunning victory in Massachusetts, at least some of them, and obviously Congressman Pence has his view and others have theirs, but there are some in the Republican Party basically say, listen, this is about the health care plan, point blank. But is it that, or again, is it a larger wake-up call to everybody, as we believe that it is? And even Congressman Pence, by the way, agrees. This is not lefty-righty. This is not health care banks. This is who do the politicians work for, and do they work for those who are the special interests that they try to accommodate, or do they work in the future interests of America, our children, and our children's children?